This podcast is made possible through donations from listeners like you and our partners at Tallman Equipment. Tallman Equipment prides itself in having more lineman tools in stock than anyone else. And now, when you're shopping online at tallmanequipment.com, look for the truck logo that says Fast Ship on hundreds of items on their website. That logo means that item is in stock and ready to ship the same day in most cases. When it comes to getting the tools and equipment linemen need, trust Tallman. Line 11 Clothing Company, making apparel for our first responders with a positive message to patriots that you can be proud of. The proceeds of the cost goes to helping our foundation ignite the fire for father engagement. Give them a follow at Line 11 Clothing on Instagram. And finally, Monzingo Knives. Each knife is created with craftsmanship that only a tradesman could provide. Find them on Instagram at Monzingo Knives and get your American-made Monzingo knife today. Welcome to the Show Up Dad podcast, where our mission is to improve the well-being of children by increasing the proportion of children growing up with an involved, responsible, committed father. The Show Up Dad Foundation, Inc. is a 501(c) organization that encourages dads to become more than just a paycheck. Today's guest is Jude Mendonca. He is an ex-homeless drug addict turned author, public speaker, serial entrepreneur who owns RecoverMeUSA.com. It's a supplement company. He also is the CEO of a Node Ranch, which is a software firm developer for crypto. But the most amazing thing I feel that he has accomplished in all of this is that he's being a show-up dad to 4 boys and has been married for 13 years. Welcome to the show, welcome to the show, brother.
Heck yeah. Thank you, David. I appreciate this.
Absolutely, man. Well, let's start off, Jude. Sorry I called you Mendonca. I know it's not Mendonca, it's Mendonca.
It was cool to hear, actually. So
yeah, it's pretty interesting how we almost have the same name, you know what I mean? Pretty cool. Right. But so let's go ahead and start off, Jude, by you just telling us how it was you growing up with your father and stuff like that in your childhood.
Right. So, I grew up, I hate to say, the typical American household where my dad wasn't around. I never got to know my biological dad. He wasn't in my life. He was very abusive, very drug addicted. My older sister got taken away from him. My mom ended up leaving him after I was born because he beat her really bad with like a wrench or something one time. And so I got to talk to him one time when I was about 16, and then he died a couple years later. So, and that was on the phone. So I never actually got to meet him or anything, but I had a stepdad, and he was really cool. He was, really nice having some sort of a male figure in life, and I mean, he wasn't the greatest male figure. He was a drug dealer in and out of prison all the time, but he loved kids, and one thing about a stepdad that actually tries, the cool thing is like they chose to do it. So there's something kind of cool to say about that with a stepdad, like he chose to be my dad and he chose to what time he did give me, chose to put that in. And he was a lot of fun. I got to learn a lot of things from him, a lot of what not to do's.
Right.
So not so much what to do, but a lot of what not to do. And, yeah, he was from the Southern California area, where you're talking about down there. So I spent a lot of time down there, a lot of time up in Montana, and, got to see a lot of that California, thug, beach sort of mindset and everything from him. And yeah, it was very, very interesting. A lot of different point of views I was able to get from him as a father.
Looking back, Jude, how was the relationship with him and your mom? How was that? How was that dynamic?
Their relationship was actually super, super awesome until my mom got pregnant with my younger sister when I was about 10 years old. It's weird. My dad loved kids, but he never wanted to have one of his own. He was physically abused really bad when he was young by his mom and his dad. And I think deep down, and we never had this conversation before he died, but I personally believe that deep down, he really was scared of, being the same thing and kind of hurting his own kids. So he was okay being a stepdad, but he didn't want to be a dad. And like him and my mom started having a really bad relationship after that. He actually left her for a while, came back, and then I want to say they ended up getting divorced probably 6 years after my sister was born.
Wow. Man,
So
sorry to hear that.
yeah, it's kind of crazy. Like, because it was
Mhm.
like they were, you're looking back on it, I've gone through it a couple of times. Like, man, they were like really good friends. They had a lot of fun times together. And then one day it just switched, you know?
It's crazy too, because I like to correlate what you're saying there with a lot of times, like when people get married and stuff like that. It's all good. It's the honeymoon phase, whatever, and then when kids come take place, you know what I mean? Sometimes a lot of men kind of freak out, and then you had the
Right.
added stress of life onto the marriage, and then it just
Right.
starts turning crazy, right?
Right. Right. They also, I want to say about a year after my sister was born, my
Hmm.
dad ended up getting in trouble again. And instead of going in, he went on the run and took my mom and sister with him. So that probably didn't help much either.
Oh wow, wow. So is that when he went to when you guys moved to Montana? Is that how that
No, so
started
we
or
lived up in Montana.
okay.
And actually, when he went on the run that time, they actually went back down to California. So they were hiding out in Cathedral City area,
Not familiar with that now.
down just outside of like Palm Springs,
Oh, okay.
Yucca Valley, San Bernardino, that whole area.
Oh wow. And how long did they stay out there for?
So they were together on the run out there. I want to say like 4 years, and then they divorced. And my dad ended up staying gone for, gosh, what was it? I want to say probably another 3 years. And then they have, with certain crimes, they have statutes of limitations. Well,
Hmm.
they never got him. They didn't give him the what do you call it, speedy process and everything. So he was able to beat that case, and he moved back home and came back to Montana after that. So with my sister.
Wow, it seems like they really liked Montana. It's probably just a chain of scenery, right? Just kind
Right.
of
Right.
slow it down a little bit, right?
Yeah, and I think that's what it was for him. Like he
Hmm.
liked it up here because it was a lot more chill, a lot easier,
How
not
did
as
you like
expensive.
Montana, if you don't mind me asking?
So I'm still in Montana. My
Okay.
wife, she'll never move from here. I enjoy it.
Hmm.
It's a great place to raise kids,
Hmm.
especially like having lived in, Portland, Las Vegas, throughout California and stuff. Like, this is definitely a way better place to raise kids, where you're gonna have some good influences around them. It's a little more controllable. We're not so crazy yet.
Hmm.
But we've got mountains, we've got streams, fishing, rafting, kayaking, like all the things to do with children. So
That's funny because I was talking to one of my apprentices today. He's from Montana, and I was like, how do you like Southern California? He's like, well, I don't like it. I'm like, why not? He's like, well, because he's like, it's too crazy. And I'm like, okay, well, a lot of people from California are moving to Montana. He's like, yeah, you guys are trying
yeah,
to California fornication Montana. He said, and I just started laughing, dude. I was just like, oh, it is what it is, and
right,
there's good people everywhere.
right.
We moved from New Mexico. I lived here 22 years ago in Southern California, and I left and I said I'd never come back, and
Oh, right.
wound up God had a whole different plan for us, and we moved back out here, and it's been amazing, and people always ask me like, oh, why are you leaving, New Mexico to go to California? It's like, dude, New Mexico was pretty rough, man. Where we
Right.
we grew up, it was pretty crazy, and we're just having a blast out here and just enjoying what God has in store for us and stuff
Right.
like that. But
Where are you at?
I'm over here in Southern California, in actually by, let's see, the closest place would be Corona.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
Corona, California, over there by Lake Alsey and all that stuff.
Right.
About 30 minutes from the ocean and 45 minutes from the mountains. So I could be surfing or snowboarding,
Right.
depending on what I want to do, you know what I mean, that
Right.
day, which is really cool. Um, the interesting thing I found out here, though, is that the work ethic, there's a lot of hardworking people out here.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of
Yep.
hustlers. You got that California hustle and flow. People don't got time to sit back and rely on the government to take care of them. I mean, you have to work, otherwise you can't
Yeah.
afford it out here.
Yep.
So I really
Yep.
appreciate the work ethic I see out here.
Yeah. Plus, got so much competition, so you have to be hungry. You have to be
Oh,
doing
for
something.
sure.
Yep.
And the entrepreneurial mindset out here is really crazy because I mean, people are just consistently thinking, how could I hustle? How could I hustle? How can I make a buck? You know what I mean? And
Right.
it's pretty cool to see because there's a lot of new products that are coming out that I'm just like blown away by, you know.
Right.
But what I wanted to ask you too, brother, is so you became a father, right?
Yeah.
Now, what is something that your dad showed you that you can share with your children?
Right. So I always tell people and I'm not trying to toot my own horn or anything with this, but a lot of
Yeah.
people really compliment me on the type of father I've been. And I think a lot of that's because, you know, they knew who I was raised by and how I was when I was young. So I think they're more amazed that I've done as well as I have with my kids. But
Hmm.
I always tell them what it comes down to is I always think about what my parents would have done, and I do the exact opposite. So
Mm.
my dad
Wow.
literally gave me a list of, you know, what not to do's. You know, he was
Hmm.
very quick to exploding, very quick to punching and hitting, you know, very quick to, you know, burning a car down or something. Like he was just so explosive.
Uh-huh.
But he also wanted to be a friend. Like he wanted to be liked. So it, it was always about, you know, buying you
Hmm.
something, you know, doing something to make you be appreciated through like a gift or something like that, or
Hmm.
that he took you somewhere, wherever it was. So what I've learned with my kids is, you know, one, to be a friend to them.
Hmm.
Because I will say I did learn that from him because I was willing to talk to my dad about anything and he
Hmm.
was willing to share anything with me. He was very honest, very open. Um, so I've done that with my kids, but I've also learned, you know, to be slow to anger, as the Bible says, you know, to be
Yeah.
quick with patience and listening, you know, to spend that time with them, give them. That was one thing I will say. My dad wasn't very good at spending time either. He was
Hmm.
always on the next hustle, always on the next thing, or he was in prison or in the run, you know. So he
Hmm.
had those different things. So me, I've designed a life where through investing and everything like that, we tried to create as much time as possible so I could spend with my wife and kids. You
Mm.
know, I've been able to take complete weeks off at a time just whenever I wanted to hang out with them and, you know, just be with them, do things with them, take them places, whatever it was. And I've almost never missed putting them to bed at night, reading a story or anything like that. So
Hmm.
I'd say, you know, I've learned a lot of the stuff that I do with my children is because my dad didn't do it with us, you know.
Hmm.
So learning to just do the opposite and get those better results.
Mm. Now, obviously, your success didn't come overnight. Um, a lot of people want what you're just talking about. You know, they don't want to work the 90, 96 hours. They
Right.
want more time to spend with their kids. What does it take to accomplish that today?
Right. Right. So like those the people that aren't there, you know,
Hmm.
we still have 24 hours in a day. And the problem is we'll
Hmm.
go that 8 hours of work, you know, let's say it's a 10 hours total you spend working because of drive time, getting ready, things like that, coming home, relaxing a little bit. But
Hmm.
the problem is, and again, another thing I learned from my dad, like I don't do sports in the home. I don't watch football. I don't watch basketball, things like that. My dad was obsessed with every sport on earth. So if
Mm.
it was on, the TV was on, and the kid had to be quiet, you know, hated that. You know,
Yeah.
why not go outside and throw the football with me? Teach me that, you know? So
Hmm.
people nowadays are spending time doing that, or they're doing a Netflix marathon, you know, they're constantly entertain.
Yeah.
There's so much time that they could go and, you know, spend with their wife, talking with her, you know, learning things with her, spend time with their children, playing a board game, things like that, you know, working on their physical health. Like we say, we don't have time, we don't have time, we don't have time. Even if you work 12 hours a day, plus those
Hmm.
extra 14, you know, there's still 10 hours there. You only need 6 hours of sleep a night, you know.
Hmm.
Some people, okay, maybe 8, but
Hmm.
really you can get along with 6 pretty well. So there's time to fit things in and do
Hmm.
what's needed to go to the next level. And kids don't require a lot, you know. Give
Yeah.
them an hour, 2 hours, undivided attention each day. That's all it takes. That's 7 hours a week. What is that? That's nothing.
Hmm. So it basically what I'm getting is it boils down to prioritizing, right?
Yeah.
And what's important? Well, you're going to
Yep.
spend time with that, right?
Yep.
Yeah, no, that's crazy, because if you break it down, I like the way you broke it down that way. Just, 12 hours, 14 hours, whatever it may be. I mean, guys today are working 14 hours a day, 16 hours a day. Some of
Right.
them are working 24 hours straight, 8 hours off, right?
Right.
And do you really have to? I guess that's the question.
Right.
Do you
Right.
really have to do that? I could see once in a while or whatever, but to make that consistent, something's going to suffer doing that.
Right. Yeah,
You
for
know,
sure.
your
For
mental
sure.
health, your physical health, your relationship with your children, your relationship with your wife,
Yep.
something's going to break down.
Yeah.
What are some of the challenges you had to overcome? Because obviously, you're highly successful. That didn't happen, like I said, overnight. So how did you deal with that? Because I know being an entrepreneur and stuff like that, it takes hustle, it
Right.
takes grind. I mean, it's
Right.
nonstop because you got to be a hustler. So how did you balance? I don't even like to say balance, Jude, because I don't believe there's balance, right?
Right.
But how did you get in that flow state to where you could tackle stuff and just be present when you needed to be? How did you
Yeah.
accomplish that?
So that took a lot of work, like none
Uh-huh.
of it's overnight. It takes effort. My first business.
Hmm.
So I started my first business probably 8 months into our marriage, something like that. So the wife was still pregnant.
Hmm.
And we were having a very bad time at the beginning of the marriage. I was one of those people, like, I loved her, I wanted to marry her, but
Hmm.
come to find out, I wasn't ready to grow up. I wasn't ready to give up other women, things like that. So I was a very bad husband out of the gate.
Hmm.
And I thought I was going to be a UFC fighter. so
Hmm.
I had all these big dreams and everything. And she got pregnant. My dad ended up getting in trouble again, going on the run, and left my younger sister with me. So now we have a teenage daughter, a baby on the way. And I kind of broke down as a man and was like, oh, you guys are
Hmm.
stealing everything from me. You're making me, you're killing my dreams and taking away my life. Like, so just a complete jerk, just exactly who
Yeah.
I shouldn't have been. Um, well, as that business went on, we got very close to a divorce and everything. And I wasn't spending time with her. I wasn't spending time with the kids.
Hmm.
God took that business away from me. We were doing $3.5 million a year in the weed industry, super
Hmm.
easy cakewalk business, no stress. It was wonderful. And we lost it all.
Hmm.
Um, we walked away with $7,000.
Wow.
And my second kid,
Uh-huh.
had just been born. So now I got two kids, a wife, and $7,000. So ended up starting a cell phone company,
Hmm.
and I had to start it about 3.5 hours away in a different city. So I moved out there while my wife and kids stayed here because we had no money, wanted to keep her near her parents and what help we could have and everything. And as I was working out there, I didn't know anybody there, so I was spending a lot of time in my mind, a lot
Hmm.
of time praying, a lot of time reflecting, trying to get business going again. And, thank God that God did that to me, that he pushed me through that, because it broke me down and made me see, like, I had all these blessings. I had the world, right there, and I
Yeah.
lost it all because of how I was being. And I realized I needed to be better. So
Hmm.
I started, figuring out, okay, well, how do I become a better husband? How do I become a better father? And
Hmm.
so as the business started doing better, which we pushed it really hard, and it was about 4 months, I was able to move back to town and then just start traveling and stuff. I
Hmm.
started doing everything I could to start spending time with her and start spending time with my kids. And
Hmm.
again, I made it very, very important that I read my kids stories at night. She didn't. I read them stories at night. I put them to bed. Like, I got that, because she got to breastfeed them. She got all this extra time with them. I needed to start being selfish a little bit and making sure I was getting dad time with them. And
Hmm.
from there, it just making them so important to me. They became my buddies. They're the only friends I have now. I've got four
Hmm.
sons that are my besties, and they're who I spend every free time that I can with.
Wow, that's awesome that you're able to build that relationship with them, but it took going through that adversity to see what was important,
Right.
you
Right.
know. The cool thing though is that you could always make money. That's what I try to tell everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Once you know how to make money, you can make money, right? It'll
Right.
always be there for you. Time is the most precious commodity. And I
Yeah.
heard you say that, that time is the most precious commodity, right? It's the
Yeah.
most precious asset we could have. So besides prioritizing, right?
Right.
How do you get the most out of your time? Like,
Right.
what do you do? Do you set boundaries or like how,
Yeah. 100%. So
Mhm.
now, like, obviously being someone in business,
Yeah,
everybody comes up to you always asking for advice, things like that.
right.
And you want to help people, especially being a Christian. We want to help people. We want to give what we can. The
Mhm.
problem is when it comes to business stuff, though, people don't always want to take your advice. So you end up wasting a lot of time.
Mhm.
Excuse me. Sorry. Getting over a cold. So I'm trying to
Yeah.
keep it down as much as possible. People don't always take your advice. So you end up wasting a lot of time. So one of the things I've learned from my mentors is start charging for your time,
Mhm.
make it worth it. So someone wants to sit down with me for an hour, they're going to spend $600. Someone wants me to help them out for a couple months or whatever, they're going to be spending 20, 30 grand. Um, it has to be worth it for me to take time away from my family. And I have to
Mhm.
know that you're serious about it. Same thing. Like, I don't watch sporting events, I'll watch like UFC fight if it's like a really, really awesome one once a month
Mhm.
or whatever. But I keep it down because what's important, the time that I get with my family.
Mhm.
So just prioritizing. When I'm doing business stuff, it's very strict on what I'm doing. Like, I took on some new partners when we started this software company and everything. And
Mhm.
the one partner, he's great. We've known each other for a long time and we're both nerdy and everything. And he thought that he's always been worried about going into a business with me because he thought we were very much the same, very spacey and all over the place and everything.
Mhm.
Well, he's found out being in business with me that when it comes to business, like, I'm direct, I'm on target, like, we're writing out lists, we're coming up with plans, we're putting everything together. And he didn't expect that. But I've learned that's what it takes. Because if I don't do that, it will be chaotic, it will be all over the place. And then I will miss out on that time. I'll miss the
Mhm.
things that are important. I'll be stressed out trying to put out the next fire or whatever it is.
Yeah, absolutely. I could see how when you're all over the place, right? You're not really set up to be focused, right? I could see how that can rob your time because you're consistently looking for stuff. I've been in people's offices where they're looking for God knows whatever they're looking for, right? And there have stacks of papers and emails and just paper mail and everything just all over the place. This one guy, I walked into his office one time, one of my good friends, he was going to start his own line company, and we're there, and we go in his office talking about going signatory and stuff like that. And this poor guy was just a walking mess, and
Yeah.
he's looking for stuff all over the books and everything. And he picks up this one map that he had for this major transmission job that was going through the state. And he finds a sandwich. He's like, I've been looking for that. And he takes a bite of it. You know what I mean? I was just like looking at this guy like, holy smokes, this guy's a wreck,
Right.
got a functioning mess, But I could see how part of being focused is just having your ducks in a row could help you with your time,
Right.
It's not
Right.
wasted,
Right.
right? Um, I know as a lineman, we pride ourselves in no wasted moves, you
Yeah.
know, and I always consistently tell everyone I talk to, like when I get questions and stuff like that, it's like, man, don't waste any moves. When you're home, be at home. You know,
Mm-hmm.
if you know that you got to put gas, in your vehicle, put gas in that vehicle for your wife or whatever, don't waste the
Right.
moves. That way that way you can maximize the most time you
Yep.
have with your kids or whatever, what I mean? Do what you need to do then.
Yep.
Um, and that's just being purpose driven, I guess,
Right.
right?
Right. Right. Um, on that time issue, I'd like to just hit
Mhm.
this out there too, because it's such a great way to look at it.
Uh-huh.
Hey, do you know who Jesse Itzler is?
Yeah, I do.
So I got to mentor under him quite a few
Oh,
years ago
wow.
in one of his programs, and just phenomenal guy. And what got me interested in him was saw him on an interview one time, and I can't remember which one it was,
Mhm.
but and he talks about this a lot, and I'm stealing it from him. I talk about it a lot, but he goes, he was talking to this guy and he's like, how often do you see your parents? He's like, oh, once a year. And he's like, okay, you're, 48 years old, let's say. So your parents are this age. And he's like, the average person in the USA lives to be this time. So if you see them once a year, you're going to see them 12 more times in your life, 12 times, and they're going to be gone. And I heard that and it was like, whoa,
wow,
how heavy, how crazy to think like, you've got that person in your life that you love so much and you're only going to see them 12 more times, even though there's, 12 years left, you're going to see them 12 more times. That's crazy. And it's over in an instant, time goes by so fast. Like, dude, I swear I'm still 10 years old sometimes. Like I can look back and remember Saturday morning cartoons and waking up early like that vividly, but it's gone. That's 28 years ago. My dad, him and I were talking on the phone. This was about 5 years ago. And we always gave each other a hard time. He's that prison con mentality. So just going back and forth. And it was in jest, but the last thing I ever said to my dad was, Dad, I'm hanging up on you. You're annoying me. And I hung up on him and I had a call the next morning at 6 a.m. He was dead.
Wow.
It goes. Wow. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries,
instantly.
Yeah. No, that hit hard.
It goes so fast. So we have to take advantage of it. You don't know if this is the last day you get to kiss your wife. You don't know if the last time you listen to your kids' annoying story about, whatever it was on the playground. Like you have to take in every moment as much as you can.
Man, when you're talking about that, man, I had a thought. The last time I spoke to my younger brother, we got in an argument and I asked him, I was like, Rico, I was like, oh man, there's got to be more than life than just building power line. I was like, what else do you want to do? And this is when I was getting ready to retire from line work, and I was talking to him and stuff like that. And he's like, I got 20 some years left. He's like, that's it. That's all I got.
Right.
And he didn't have that. We kind of got in an argument from there and he hung up on me and I hung up on him and, whatever. And we said our P's and Q's and I never talked to him ever again. He never came home.
Wow.
Yeah, he was 38 years old and he died a day before his 39th birthday. In fact, it's his 2-year anniversary, October 26th.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's coming up already, but that was, man, just like you said, blink of an eye. I still remember them calling me, my mom calling me. I was at home and crying and just saying, your brother just fell. I'm like, what do you mean he just fell? I mean, this is a strong dude. And I'm like, what do you mean he just fell? And they're like, oh, I don't know. They called, said he was hunting and he fell. And he never came home, man,
Right.
So we don't know the time that we have.
Yep.
We got to make the most of it.
Yep.
How can we stop giving away our time so cheaply? I know that's something that a lot of people have trouble with. I get calls all the time and they're asking me like, oh man, I want to go to my son's game, but I feel so obligated to my crew because that's my crew. I don't want to let them down that, and sometimes some crews, I know I was guilty of it when I pushed, I'd guilt them. I'd be like, come on, man, you're going to leave us short. And, we can't do that without you or whatever. You know what I'm saying? And you'd put a lot of guilt on the guys, and how can they stop giving away their time so cheaply? What is your suggestion for that?
Right.
Like,
so it's 3 things.
Okay.
The first thing, it's a mindset thing about your own worth. So I tell people this, I use this in a lot of my coaching programs. I even think I put it in my first book, but imagine your life is 100 bottles of wine. Okay. What happens is, if there's a vintage of wine that comes out, 100 bottles, 20 of them are drank. What happens to those next 80? They go up in value, right?
Yeah.
People spend more on it. Okay. You spent 20 of your bottles gaining all the experience, figuring things out. Now you're out in the world. What do we normally do? Well, we work some lame job, because we're still in our early 20s and we just want to party, So boom, another 20 bottles goes by. Okay. Now you've only got 60 bottles left. What are you doing with those? Well, you've maybe taken on a better job or something, but you still haven't done anything, and you're still not doing anything because this is just the societal norm, Instead, we're getting loans, we're taking out credit cards, we're buying a boat, we're just over leveraging ourselves. So we have to keep working. So those bottles never go up in value. The entrepreneur and the investor, they understand things differently. They understand, I've only got so many bottles of wine left. I got to make these the most precious bottles of wine that I can, And so they start doing things where like they'll start investing in real estate or, just whatever, again, you can increase cash flow so they can start having more time. So that way these bottles of wine, they have more of, they're getting to enjoy more of it. It's worth more. So that's that first thing is, you got to start looking at your life differently because it's finite. You only have so much time left. You have to understand how precious that is. And the problem is, when we're 30 and younger, we don't see that. We have all the time in the universe when the years we should be sacrificing are our 15 to 28. If most people had an investor's mindset, did some learning at 15, started putting things together, and at 15, and started doing the things they're supposed to do, 28, 30, they're retiring. They're living that life. They're having the things they want to do. They can be on the yacht at that point. The second thing is, to start, and I kind of mix those first two together, is to start figuring out how to invest for cash flow, to start buying your time back, start learning, learn from people who've made it in real estate, learn it from people that have made it with stocks or Forex or something, learn from people that have invented something and figured out how to patent it and leverage that, whatever it is, learn from people who have found businesses, built multiple of them, but they're not working them, well, why aren't they working them? Oh, they've learned, to put systems, processes together and leverage them. And then that's the third one, understanding leverage. You can leverage other people's times. The movie The Founder, have you ever seen that, about Ray Kroc founding McDonald's?
No, I haven't seen it. I heard it was a good movie though.
Totally recommend watching it. Lots of bad language in it, but super awesome business movie. One thing you'll see with him is a lot of mom and pops, they suffer and die because they think they have to do everything themselves. Right? They're in that business. They live that business. They die in that business. Kids usually get mad at them and walk away because everything was about the business,
Yeah.
They never learn to manage other people because they're scared of the people stealing their idea, or not doing it right, whatever. Ray Kroc never thought about that. Bring them in, teach them. They want to become our competition. Who cares? I'll kill them. Hey, they're going to do a bad job. Who cares? Kick them out, hire a new one. He believed in total leveraging of people as assets and bringing them in to create more money and time for him. And then he kept growing it. And then he brought other people in, gave them positions of company, gave them part ownership of the company, things like that. So they could continue to blow that thing up while he did Ray Kroc things.
I like that. I've heard something similar to that. Scarcity mindset.
Yeah.
That's the first thing I think about when you talk about how people who are afraid they're going to steal or whatever. That's that scarcity mindset that keeps you from expanding and growing, like you said. Just to touch base on what you said with that Kroc guy, I mean, he didn't have fears. Fear wasn't holding him back. He's like, I'm just going to do this. I don't care how it's done, and let's go for it. You know what I mean? And I think a lot of times as husbands, as fathers, right, we're afraid. I know my own father got stuck in a dead end job. I mean, it was a great job. It had insurance and stuff like that, but that's not truly what he wanted to do. And he stayed there until he retired. Right. And he truly didn't really start to live until he started up our cattle business, the ranch that we had. Right.
Oh, nice.
And he did that. But at the same token, once again, that same mindset he carried from working and retiring from the city, he brought that into the cattle industry with what he was doing with there, because once again, I can't leave. These people steal our implements. They'll cut the fence. They'll borrow our bull to, inseminate their cattle, whatever, you know what I mean? And that's that scarcity mindset of always thinking that people are going to take advantage of you, and I think that's from childhood, I would think,
Yeah. Well, yeah. Cause it's, we're not taught to understand and do things the wealthy are. We're taught to be servants in all reality.
Right.
and our parents didn't know any better. They understood, go to work or go to
Mm-hmm.
school, get good grades so you can go to college, so you can get a good job, so you can pay taxes and die, you know. So we weren't taught any different. So it's us,
Mm-hmm.
guys like us breaking that norm and then
Mm-hmm.
teaching that on to the next level, which again is the importance of spending that time with that next generation to make sure we're getting these messages and thoughts out there.
Mm-hmm.
My kids are already way wealthier than I was in my mid 20s. I've set up things in their names already. We've already put things together.
Mm-hmm.
One of them right now, him and I, he's been working on writing a book series, and we've been putting that together for him and everything, helping him with that. The four of them together, they wanted to start a business. So we've been putting the things together for a business for them also. I didn't think that way at their age. I was trying to get
No.
high.
Right.
you know?
I was chasing after girls.
Right.
Yeah. That's crazy. Yeah, no, and it's definitely the narrative that we've learned, right? I think they teach that in school. I mean, think about it. This is how
Mhm.
our kids are being conditioned, and we were conditioned, right? You get up at 7, you go to school till 3:30, right? You do that every day, Monday through
Right.
Friday. Isn't that doesn't that sound like a job to you?
Yeah. 100%.
Seriously, that's what they're doing. They're conditioning the next workforce.
Yep.
Someone, I mean, and what are we? We're kind of like, if you really think about it, we're worker bees.
Yeah.
We're paying for these people who get to hang out and do nothing, that are in charge of us, who make the rules for us, right?
Right. Right.
It's crazy. And when you don't fall into that and you start thinking about a future, start letting your money make money for you, just like on Rich Dad Poor Dad, he talks about that.
Mm-hmm.
That starts breaking down that cycle that everybody's in. But we have to educate ourselves, and we have to educate, like you have been doing with your children, the next generation to be able to step out of that cycle. There's nothing wrong
Right.
with hard work, nothing at all. You know what I mean? I'm a blue collar dad,
Yeah.
right? But you got to start working smarter, not harder. And
Yep.
I never truly understood that until, because my dad would tell me all the time, go to school, go to school. His thoughts was go to school and get a degree and whatever, you know what I mean? And me, I was like, I can't deal with school, whatever. I don't like that stuff. But he had it right in a sense that it wasn't school, it was educating yourself.
Yes. Yep.
you know I think we bought into that. You got to go to school to get a good job, you got to go to school to get this. I know guys whose sons have spent countless money on education, and because they have education with no any type of experience, they can't get
Mm-hmm.
hired,
Right.
and they have this tremendous debt, and it's upside down.
Yep.
And I
Yep.
think a lot of people are like that.
Yep. Yeah, and it's all set up that way on purpose, for sure, for sure. But you hit it on the head there. It's got to be
Uh-huh.
about self-education. It's got to be about, being motivated enough to
Mhm.
do something, to learn something, to push yourself out there. That's um oh gosh, I can't think of the gentleman's name. Tony Robbins talks about him a lot. But this guy, he
Mhm.
was a janitor, worked as a janitor his whole life, but
Mhm.
he learned how to invest, and he invested. The guy ended up, retiring, and he had like $35 million.
Wow.
He was a janitor in a school district. But same thing. I mean, Warren Buffett, he
Mhm.
started out with what, $30,000 or something like that. Guy's worth, 80 some $billion right now. All he's ever done is invest. Just invest more and more and more. Keep investing, keep investing. So it's not hard.
Mhm.
It's just consistency. You can be
Mhm.
a dishwasher and make it. You could be a doctor and make it. Yeah, one could make it a little faster because they're bringing in more money. They got more disposable income,
Mhm.
but you can still do it. I always tell people, and this is true. So all my businesses that I've had, I've never paid myself more than $38,000 a year. We've always lived very cheaply.
Mhm.
My getting my first property and everything, that was all money that I made and saved up working $15 an hour jobs, before I got things going. Like,
Mhm.
it can be done. You just have to make those right decisions. I didn't smoke cigarettes. I didn't go to the bar and drink like all my friends did. So I always had more money than them. I took that money, set it aside, did little things with it here or there.
Mhm.
Slowly I turned that into an 8-plex apartment, and then things went from there. Like, it can be done no matter where you're at, but it's just doing it, doing the work, putting in that time and effort. And that's again where I say, like, man, get some 15-year-olds, bring in some classes in these schools and stuff, teaching kids to invest, to start a business, to do whatever instead of just becoming a serf. And then by the time they're 30, you've got people that are just these juggernauts in business that are changing the world.
Yeah, I think that'd be so much more important today than what they're teaching, this cancel culture and everything else.
Right.
I mean, it's like crazy. It's like, why aren't you teaching these kids this? I remember when I went into the military, it's the first time I learned how to balance a checkbook, because that's when checks are still around,
right.
And they actually had a class where you would have to learn how to balance your checkbook, you know what I mean? And they held you accountable, because if you bounced or you wrote a phony check, or that check bounced when you dropped it, 3 feet high or whatever, they could get you for that, you know what I mean? And so they held you responsible after they taught you, you know what I mean? And I think we need to teach our kids that as well, is do this, but there is responsibilities, and we got to hold you, you got to have accountability.
Yep.
And you could possibly lose something, along the way.
Right.
So
that's another lesson right there, that we are instilling in our children that my parents didn't really instill in us. Like, we lived poor, we grew up in a trailer court and stuff, but my dad was a drug dealer. He had money, and I'm not saying he was like, Escobar or anything like that, but I mean, he made good money with very little work. So, he always bought me things, bought me toys, things like that. Again, he wanted to be liked. He wanted to be the friend. My sister, it was even worse. Like, man, that girl got everything under the sun. Our kids, we make them work and buy things. We still get them gifts, but we don't go overboard. We're not those parents like, oh, we go to the store and they got something just because we went to the store and we want them to be quiet. Like, no, they have to earn things. So all the kids want to start snowboarding, and we encourage that because we want to start going skiing and snowboarding as a family, more family time together, driving up to the mountains, things like that. But we made the kids work for it. So they have their dog poop cleanup business that they ran this whole summer and been saving up money, and they're buying all their snowboard stuff. They worked for it. They put that together. And, my youngest is 8 years old and my oldest is 12. So that's 4 boys, each saved up about $800. Like, wow, how awesome is that?
That is cool. And it's teaching them too good work ethic, which is really awesome. I had a good friend of mine. He did something like that with his 2 twin boys, where he had them painting on the streets. They have your number, right? Like your address number. And he made a little printout, right, where you can paint on it or whatever, and it's the American flag with their number. It's kind of cool.
That is genius,
dude. Amazing idea. Gosh. And dude, all kinds of people were calling him and hitting him up and like, man, come to our house. We'll pay them. You know what I mean? We want that. And it came out really cool, man. And all it took was him just getting a little stencil, creating it for them, and then letting them do the work, and then just driving to where they need to do. Really cool idea,
Oh yeah, that is brilliant. That is brilliant. We might be stealing that this spring. You might have to give me your friend's name so I can thank him for it.
Yeah. He's actually one of our sponsors. He makes all our shirts and stuff like that for the Show Up Dad. And,
oh, killer.
Yeah, Line 101 clothing company. Good dude. But yeah, he's on a mission to raise the next generation and really just start changing the narrative of what they're learning in school and stuff like that. Yes. And just helping out, where he can, raising good, healthy adults. Because at the end of the day, that's all we can do as fathers.
Right.
Try to raise up children that can function in society and not be a drag.
Right. Yeah. And right now, all we're doing is making a confused generation.
Oh, for sure. I mean, gosh, we live in a day and age where 5-year-olds don't even know what their own gender is.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
So crazy. I look at all this stuff, and here's the conspiracist in me, but looking at everything going on with Korea and Russia and China, and it's like, well, why wouldn't they be making moves and acting up? We don't even know what genders we are.
Wow.
We're confused over here. Sounds like it's the time for them.
Oh, for sure. I mean, And then we're so divided, right? I know we talk a lot about scripture and stuff like that, but I mean, the Bible clearly states, man, a house divided cannot stand. And
Yep.
that just doesn't mean in America, how we have divided parties, divided whatever. I mean, it's even in your own home. Yeah. So a lot of our generation is just super, super confused, and I blame the parents, dude, because they're being confused because the parents are confused. How do you
Mhm.
blame a 6 or 7-year-old
Right.
that they're confused, when where are they learning that? There's mirror neurons and they're seeing you. If you're confused, then what do you think your kids are going to grow up being confused in? You know what I mean?
Right. Right. And I think I've got, I don't want to call them friends, but
Mm-hmm.
people we know that have gone very much that direction.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's kind of an attention thing. My kid has this issues, my kid has this issues, my kid's got this going on.
Mm-hmm.
Look at me and the things I'm having to do because of it. Like
Mm-hmm.
it almost seems that way to me. It's either they're like, oh, my kids got all these problems and stuff. Look at it, or like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
poor me. I have to go through all this because of all this stuff. And it's, I don't know, it's just kind of where our society's at. And I think,
Mm-hmm.
Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, all that stuff, I think even that has a weight on it too, because we become these people that, we're doing things for the likes, for the views, for that feeling of, what do
Mm-hmm.
you call it? Not admiration, but that just feeling of being validated,
Validated, yeah.
just getting
Accepted.
that win accepted. Yeah. So,
Mm-hmm. No, I for sure see that as well. I think a lot of times too, it's not just the validation or the acceptance. I think a lot of times as parents, we become our labels,
yeah.
right? Like I hear so many people say, "Oh, my ADHD, my ADHD." Well, you
Yeah.
keep talking about you actually become that.
Yeah.
And I heard that somewhere else too. It's like, "Oh man, you're going to become your label. You're going to
Yeah.
become what you think on. You're going to become
Right.
what you're calling yourself." There's tremendous power in your words.
100%. I always push because I hate, like,
Mm-hmm.
most people would consider me, a recovering drug addict.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a recovering drug addict. I'm not a drug addict at all. God
Mm-hmm.
made me new. I'm new. Like, I have no drug addiction. Yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
used to do drugs. They were fun. I had a great time. And then I learned how bad they were. I no longer do that. I'm not an ex-alcoholic, recovering alcoholic. I don't drink alcohol. Choose not to.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't bother me. I stay away from it. When you're a recovering, if that's always in the back of your mind, you're
Mm-hmm.
always on the edge of falling back into it.
Wow.
100%. Anything we put on ourselves, 100%, you said labels, whatever it is, we become that.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me, you can create a stutter. You start telling yourself every day, like, oh man, I've got this stuttering problem. I have problems saying this word. The next thing you know, you're trying to say the S and it's just not coming out. And like, you can create those things. Our
Mm-hmm.
brains are a supercomputer, it's programmable.
Mm.
So, what we tell ourselves, what we believe, that picture in the mirror, 100%, that becomes exactly who we are.
Man, no, that's super right. Because I was listening to Dr. Karen Leaf, and she's always talking about neuroplasticity and stuff like that. And you can rewire your brain every
Yeah.
day. You're rewiring it, what you see and everything. And a lot of that has to deal with our quality of sleep as well. Are we getting enough hours?
Right.
And obviously, if you're working 24 and 8, you're not getting that sleep that is good for you to be
Right.
able to have your mind just start regenerating,
Right.
start healing itself. So no, it's amazing the way God created our bodies and stuff like that for us to function. And
Yeah.
it's just like we're out of balance though.
Yeah.
We're out of sync, right?
Yep. Yep.
And we somehow got to get back in sync with it.
Right. Right. 100%.
So a lot of times I hear like people when they call me up and they ask me questions and stuff like that, they're continuously just bashing on their wife or bashing on their kids or their jobs or whatever. And it's like, I'm listening to them like, oh, well, do you have anything good to say?
Right.
You know what I mean? Because it's contagious. You know what I mean?
Right.
You're constantly just in that negative space. And I get it. People need a vent.
Right.
But at what point is letting it out where, you know, you can't just let it out and you just stay stuck there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think a lot of people get stuck in that cycle to where they're just continuously just speaking this death.
You know I can tell you, going back to, you know, when I was talking about me and my wife weren't doing good, and we almost got to the point of divorce and everything. Mm-hmm. And I'll admit, my wife was amazing when I married her. Mm-hmm. I turned her into something bad because I was a horrible husband, you know?
Wow.
And so when we got to that point of being on the verge of divorce, like, I had everything in the world that I could have complained about with her, 100%, mm-hmm. because there was a lot she was doing wrong. Mm-hmm. But that didn't matter. You know, once I realized like I wasn't going to divorce her, I was going to make it work, put in the work. It didn't matter the things that she was doing wrong and still doing wrong. All that mattered was, what am I doing for her? What am I doing for her and the kids? What am I doing for the relationship? How am I not filling her cup? And once you start doing those things, you know, you start living for the other person, because marriage, what's marriage for? It's to show us a relationship between God and the church, you know? Well, what did God do for the church? Gave his only son. God came down, left his heavenly abode, and died for the church so we could be with him one day. I wasn't doing that for my wife. So I start doing that for her, start doing that for the family. Well, what happens? She starts seeing that. Over time, her heart's starting to soften. Not because I'm like, well, you don't cook enough. You don't do this. You know, you're not doing this. You're such trash, blah, 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 which I'm not going to lie. You know, some of that did slip through because I still had a lot to work through and stuff in my attitude. But the fact that I was pouring in, that I was spending the time, that I was making the effort, that softened her to where she started making the effort also. You know, that's why the whole 50-50 thing, even in like business partnerships, you know, that's crap. Yeah. Give 100. Always give 100. Give everything you can to someone, you know, even something like this, like a little talk and stuff. I'm here to wanting to give everything to you guys because this is so important, because it's so much bigger than just me, you know, just my wants. My marriage is my kids' future. And if I'm not showing them how to be that husband, how to be that father, if I'm not giving 100%, and instead I'm only giving 50 and I'm worried about my 50 coming back to me, they're going to grow to be selfish bastards.
Wow.
100%. So we gotta, you know, we gotta give, we gotta put in that effort.
Man, I like what you said. You know, they're going to see what you do and they're going to become selfish themselves. And it's so true, dude, when we are expecting for our spouse to pick up what we're not doing. In fact, you burn them out. You know, I'm guilty of that.
Yeah.
I could be, you know, I don't do that anymore. You know, at least I hope I don't, you know what I mean? But man, I was burning my wife out, bro.
Right.
I was burning her out and I didn't even know it. Or maybe I did know it and I just didn't care because, you know, I'm working, I'm providing, you take care of what I don't need to take care of right now because my job's important, you know.
Right.
Start putting the job, the career, everything before them, saying, I'm doing this for you.
Right. Right.
You know, so it's crazy, man. It's crazy. But Jude, how can anybody reach out to get in touch with you if they want to be a part of your coaching or anything like that, man? Can you share that with our audience if you don't mind?
Yeah. So, you know, the easiest way, we all have a media that we're good with. Me, for some reason, Facebook just works the best for me. So you find me, you know, Jude Mendonca on Facebook, at the Barefoot Millionaire on Facebook. I have a website, judemendonca.com, but it's actually down right now. We're currently redoing it because I have a second book coming out here soon. So they can also find my first book on Amazon. And
yeah, for sure, man. And heck yeah, man, I'd like to get that book and maybe we could even do like a book drop or something like that. I don't know. Figure something out, you know what I mean? But once again, thank you, Jude, for coming on here. And this is Dave from the Show Up Dad, just encouraging you fathers just to keep being that dad that shows up for your family. They need you. God bless.